First of all, from the time standpoint. Secondly, from the cost standpoint, it's gotten much more difficult. And if the family is not able to provide much in the way of assistance, that's really difficult.
But I don't really see much of a benefit from the private school. Like, yeah, it gets a few extra dollars, but like, it's not, and to that private school, like, I'm sure it's not hurting for money at all. Like, I don't even really see much of a benefit.
Not all private schools are prestigious 25K a year academies with wonderful facilities, great teachers. And I'm not denigrating the private schools at all. The ones.
Oh, I am. I'm going to take them to the woodshed.
You don't know how amazing you are. You might not see it in the mirror.
Welcome to the Act Out Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Tomlin. Before we begin, I need you to like, to subscribe, to leave a 5-star review. The best way to get this message across is to share it. So share this with your friends, your family, and even people who call it pork roll. Yes, I know it's actually called Taylor ham, but everybody deserves a second chance. My favorite thing in the world, constructive compliments. Please leave those in the form of a comment down below. For any complaints you may have, please send those to bluevoterguide.org. And remember, Adam is spelled V-O-T-E. Pretty please. Today's episode comes from the city of Atlanta. And we sit down with middle school teacher extraordinaire, John Donegan, a.k.a. Mr. Donegan, a.k.a. Johnny Danger, a.k.a. John. The man has a lot of nicknames, but much like Prince, he's a symbol. And Mr. Donegan and I, we talked about a lot of things. One of the first things we did was lament not being able to be star athletes on Major League Baseball teams, because apparently talent is more important than looks. I learned not to make an audacious claim in front of a teacher. And now, thanks to Johnny Danger, I hate Honest Abe. And Mr. Donegan makes up for it, though, because he taught me how to connect with my fellow youths. It was great being able to sit in class with Mr. Donegan. I learned a whole lot. And I feel as if it makes up for all the classes that I missed in college and in law school, too, actually. Okay, now I'm just telling on myself. Let's roll the tape. John, do you prefer Mr. Donegan, Johnny Danger, or just John?
Oddly, I am called Mr. Donegan by people who should be calling me John.
I guess that's one of the pitfalls of being a teacher for so long.
It just kind of became my identity.
How long were you a teacher?
42 years.
42 years? So I guess you started whenever you were in utero?
Yes, that's pretty accurate. My parents said I taught them a lot of lessons, some that they didn't wish to learn.
Well, so whenever you were younger, like, did you know that you wanted to be a teacher?
No, but there were experiences like talking to my drama teacher in high school where I said, should I consider a career on the stage? And he looked at me and said, have you thought about being a teacher? And then in college, I tried to go into broadcasting so I could do podcasts. Oh. And the broadcasting instructor said, have you considered teaching? So there were always motivations in that direction. Plus, I majored in history, and it was a great chance to talk about what I liked and what I sort of knew a little bit about, and continue learning more about as part of my living.
Yeah. Well, what was the very first thing you wanted to be whenever you grew up? Do you
Center remember? Fielder, San Francisco Giants, when Willie Mays retired. Didn't work out.
I was about to say, I think you had a shot. I don't know if you could see, but wearing the Sid Bream 1992, I think it was just the divisional series. Do you remember this game?
It was magical. We were living in Mississippi. The kids were asleep. I was the only one up watching the game, and I gave the most raucous, silent cheers in the history of baseball. Because I couldn't wake anybody up because then I would be, sleeping out in the backyard, and I wasn't a fan of that.
Right. I remember this, and even the Skip Carey, right? That's the play-by-play.
Braves win. Braves win. Braves win. Yes, I may have heard that.
Yeah, man. God, I love that. So yeah, I wanted to be a first baseman for a little bit, but my big thing, I want to be a professional wrestler.
Well, the name Hulk Hogan was taken, so you'd have had to look at something else.
I was the ultimate kid for a while. pretty cool name, but like now being a 39-year-old ultimate kid, I don't think it would have worked out so well.
I was 39 for a very long time.
I think I will still be 39 even next year. I'm going to stop at this number.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah. So you said that you majored in history whenever you were in college.
I did. And at the end of my third year, I had actually accrued enough credits to graduate. I got a note from the dean that said, "Congratulations, we'll see you at the graduation ceremony." Well, this was the end of my third year in school, and I knew there was another football season coming up. I had a girlfriend at the time that I liked very much, and I did not want to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and looked at the options for adding on a teaching certificate and found that if I added that with one more year, I could get the teaching certificate and be ready to roll and actually maybe have a chance at a job and a career when I got out. So I added that on. At the time, I was working as an RA in the dorms, so I had some income, and it all made good sense. So I got that fourth year, added the teaching degree, and away we went.
Did you go to Florida?
Oh, yes,
okay,
very
yeah,
much.
Yes, okay. I thought you were a Gator.
Bleeding orange and blue. Sorry about that, UGA fans.
Did you just get get a job from Mississippi, like out of college or something? Was that your first teaching gig?
What had happened was I got out. I went and applied to where I lived in St. Pete, Florida, Pinellas County Schools, and got an interview. And the guy said to me, if I had 5 social studies teachers die today, I wouldn't replace any of them. So perhaps you want to consider another career. So I started substitute teaching, which, figured sooner or later something might shake out and I'd pick up a position. But as luck would have it, my wife's mother saw an ad, or actually my wife saw an ad for a teacher needed in Martin County, Florida. And so I went down there and interviewed, absolutely didn't get that job. But then at Christmas time, somebody else quit. And the principal had gone out of town, had taken the applications with her because that was when they kept files in a shoebox. But they remembered that somebody who was a friend of Carolyn's had applied, and they gave me a call, hired me over the phone. I started in January of that year and have basically been working ever since. So usually in teaching, oftentimes dumb luck.
Yeah.
You walk in the day somebody quits, you suddenly have a job. Or you're subbing and you're in the building, and that gives you a connection that gets you a position. So sometimes a little luck plays a role. Yeah. So that got me my first 2 years in Florida.
I've got the dumb part down pat. If I could only find the luck, that would be, pretty.
I mastered in both.
What did you said you started out as a substitute teacher, right? What was that first class that you substituted? Do you remember like the age group?
It was middle school mostly.
Oh, okay.
And it was a wild up and down swing of good jobs, bad jobs. If you're a substitute teacher, more power to you. So some classes were really easy. Typing at the Adult Education Center, where my task was to take roll, that was pretty good. Yeah. I read War and Peace that week. Subbing in 7th grade PE, not so good because those kids were all over the place. I subbed in a social studies class where the teacher had left this as the lesson plan: discuss current events. So I have 5 classes of 8th graders coming in, and my lesson plan for the day is discuss current events. Unfortunately, if you were a hostage, the Iran hostage crisis had just happened. So we actually had a legitimate base to build on and talk about things. And I pulled out of my back pocket one of those lessons they had given me, and one of the few things I learned in education school, how to manipulate or work the class in order to talk about that subject. So it actually worked out okay. But yeah, subbing can be great. It can be absolutely brutal because you are a temp. Mm-hmm.
What was it about that like age group, that, like 11 to 14, that like you kind of either like could connect to or connect with or just resonate with, and you were able to make a difference in so many lives?
Difference in their lives. I didn't hurt anybody. I think
a positive difference.
I think why I worked well with middle school, and I taught everything from 6 to 12 and feel like I did okay in all ages. But my last 23 were with middle school. And I think it's because they and I share very similar senses of humor and levels of maturity, which is a little disturbing.
So I've been able to, you were still even teaching at the time, like went and I did like some reading for like an academic bowl and stuff. It was amazing though, like how many different students that you had. Like even some were out of high school at that point.
Yeah.
We're in college and we're like, hey, I'm going to come back. Mr. Donegan needs help this weekend for the academic bowl. So you had kids that already graduated high school. You had kids that were like that you were still teaching at the time. And it was just a whole smorgasbord of like students that were like, Mr. Donegan, he's the man.
Well, I can't fully explain that, but they enjoyed it. I made sure they had a role. They weren't just hanging around. They would read the questions. They would take responsibilities for writing and creating questions or directing the younger kids and where to go. And I guess because we had a pretty good relationship that they all wanted to come back and participate. You yourself were the host with the most. So that probably prepared you for your current career.
Well, yeah, whenever I give any kind of thank you speech, I will mention you first for, like giving me
blushing.
So what was your like favorite period of like social or history to teach kids?
I ended up mostly a world history / geography, geography kind of class with Asia and Africa all the time.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of became a sweet spot. Prior to that, it would have been American history. My first job in Georgia, after I moved up from Florida, was teaching Georgia history, which I didn't know Georgia history particularly, except from an American history standpoint. Right. So that was rather entertaining. I was usually about a chapter ahead in the Georgia history book. And any student who had me back in 1980, whatever, will remember that it was basically American history. Oh, and this also happened in Georgia, as opposed to this is Georgia history and here's how it fit into America. Because,
I mean, the only thing I know about Georgia history is that it was a penal colony, essentially. Like, wasn't it created as a buffer to like between Florida owned by the Spanish?
The latter point is the more important. There were debtors' prisons in Britain, and Oglethorpe, which would be a great name for a university.
It's got some legs to it.
Yeah. And he wanted to do something for people who were in the debtors' prisons. And that was part of who came over here. But we were no Australia. We didn't bring over convicts and chains and that kind of thing. It's a nice story, but it's not totally accurate. But the buffer colony absolutely was true.
Well, me being from Georgia, I was trying to like make myself seem like I came from a different.
You're a wannabe descendant of a convict, but no, you're the descendant of good people, and I can't help that.
So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but
well, that's my sweet spot.
For Asia and African history, what's your favorite period to teach there?
The apartheid. There's nothing good about apartheid.
Yeah.
But getting students aware of that situation and of Nelson Mandela and how inspiring the man was, it was a great lesson, I thought. And
how do you really teach something like that to a group of kids that, like, if you do a fart noise, it's funny? So how do you talk about something with such gravity and are able to still get them to connect?
Well, just for the record, I did not do fart jokes in my class. That was not part of my vibe.
Fair enough, yeah. You
just have to present it as it is. Seventh graders, and that was my last year's, was all seventh grade, you ask how students change over time. Yeah. And I think seventh graders today are older in that sense than a seventh grader of 1981. The 1981 seventh grader was still kind of just a big, chunky elementary school kid.
Yeah.
Where the seventh grader of today is a little more aware of the world and its pros and its cons, and a little more sophisticated, as much as a seventh grader can be. And so you just present it straight up and say, this is what happened. This is what happened to Stephen Biko. This is what went on Robben Island. This is how many years Mandela spent in prison. And this is what he did when he came out. I think if you just go straight, they're ready for you to be straightforward. Now, you don't want to be all doom and gloom, and you don't want to just present the awful stuff, but they are ready for you to be straight up and not sugarcoat things.
What do you think is the impetus for the change, or why do you think kids are more
why are they
ready now?
And again, I don't ever want to use the word mature with a seventh grader, because they are capable of giving you a very wise response about the accomplishments of Mandela, and then they will follow it up with a fart joke. What's the difference? Probably just increased exposure to a variety of information, parents who are willing to go to places that the parents of a generation ago did not travel. A recognition that particularly among your brighter kids, I hate to say it that way, but that kids are able to take in much more information. I used to get reading recommendations from some of my best 7th graders. I'm walking down the row one day and a girl has finished her work the first 3 minutes of class that normally took 60, and she's reading Barbara Kingsolver's The Poisonwood Bible. So I started getting suggestions for reading from a 12-year-old because she was so sharp and up to speed.
Yeah.
And I think schools got better at not holding kids back, but letting them move, particularly in just about everything. So they led to a student who was a tad more worldly wise. Now, this is not all of them. Yeah. Some of them have difficulty opening their locker. Those are...
Now I feel like I'm getting called out here. Okay.
No, you couldn't find your locker to open it is what I was told by your wife, but I won't go there.
So that's another good question. Like, how are you able to, whenever you have students of, I don't want to say like different abilities and different interests, and they're so there's so many different personalities, how are you able to keep so many different attention, different types of attention?
I had classes that were largely leveled by a gross ability. And by that, I mean, if the kid's reading under the 50th percentile, he was going to be in a different grouping than the kids in that top 25 or 20th percentile. And that's a controversial thing, whether you should have a blended class with every kid from or whether you should level things. I get into discussions with other teachers about whether that's a good idea or not. I really never had classroom, and I hear about lots of teachers who have a classroom with kids who are really struggling to do almost anything, and kids who are ready to read, Barbara Kingsolver novels, and they have to be magicians in the classroom. And I couldn't personally do that very well. I couldn't take that group and this group and have them all doing slightly different versions of the same thing. So for me, I lean toward at least a little bit of leveling so that I wasn't seeing kids with wildly different abilities. But even within a top X percent of kids in terms of their motivations and skills and college readiness and all that kind of stuff, they all have slightly different approaches. So maybe Monday I'm doing a lecture, and the kids who are very auditory and they learn that way, they're having a great time. But the kid who's largely visual, well, that's okay because I'm going to throw, thanks to modern technology, and I do believe in death by PowerPoint. I live by death by PowerPoint. I can put up images and pictures and clips so that the kid who wants to see the stuff can do that. And then the next day, we'll do it different. I'm going to put them into a group, and we're going to do some kind of a group activity where they have to create something and they have to work in tandem with one another to try and reach a different segment of the students. So by maybe even doing the same thing on Monday for the lecture crowd, Tuesday I'm reinforcing that, but with a different methodology in order to get the kids who didn't care for the lecture thing and had basically, not that anybody ever nodded off in my class, but had basically, maybe once in a while, but to try and hit them a different way.
Yeah. So what is the, you said that like kind of teachers will debate whether you should have more like leveling in the classroom or if there needs to be like a variety. It seems like you're kind of more on the side that like you would like the level. It
needs to be done very carefully, and you don't want to create, maybe ghetto's not the right word, but you don't want to create some class that's easily identified as, remember Welcome Back Kotter, the sweat hogs were his, you don't know the show Welcome Back Kotter. Oh, bless your heart. It was a 1970s TV show, so perhaps not in your consciousness, but he taught the crummy, the bad students, the troublemakers, the kids who came from bad backgrounds. And it was a comedy. And you don't want to create that kind of grouping. And that's why many people who oppose leveling of classes, and they've got a good point, is if you've got a class of low achievers, there's nothing to, particularly if the teacher's just not trying to engage them.
Yeah.
Here, have another worksheet, kid, and keep quiet. And I've seen plenty of that. And I tried to avoid that.
Yeah. All right. So with that, almost a little separate but equal type deal. So yeah, I could see how like leveling would kind of have trouble. But even the having a wide range of abilities in the classroom, that also presents a lot of challenges.
And I was rarely in that situation. I mean, I was, particularly in the first 10 years, but the last 20, I had kids, they were all college bound, and that is a different environment. And to those teachers out there who are not in that environment, who have all ranges of kids in the single classroom and have to figure out how to make it work with a group of 8th, 9th, 10th graders, that's really challenging instruction to do.
Yeah.
And I personally was not real good at that. You know, in the old days, what did you do? What did you do in 1980 with a kid who wasn't very good? Well, he got an F.
Yeah.
And the kids who were great got A's. And that was not a good system particularly. You want to find a way to reach that kid who was clearly over his head and try and help him to move it on up. And most kids can do okay in most situations if they're getting the right instruction.
Whenever you were first starting out, did most of the kids, were they thinking, well, as soon as I get finished with school, I'm going to go to college, or was it more of a vocational track? My
first years, I could be from 80 through about the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a high school with some students who were not particularly academically inclined. And for them, getting out of high school was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what they would do after high school, I don't think they knew. Some schools, some situations did a good job with vocational prep and ideas, but also watch the school shop, for example, be just closed up and the teacher reassigned to teach. I don't even know what he got, but they just closed down some of those kinds of programs in the school. I think they're bringing some of them back with the recognition that the college track is not the ideal track for every kid. And so we did see I think we saw a period in the 80s, maybe 90s, where you had kids who were not intending to go to college, yet they were on that track and just kind of going through the motions in school because it wasn't engaging them.
Well, they were going through a system that wasn't serving them. Even though they didn't necessarily know what their goals were, they're getting no help or anything. So for that kid who doesn't know whether they're going to go to college or not, or doesn't even really know what they're going to do after high school, what are some important tools that a teacher can give them to set them up, regardless of whether they're going to go to college or just jump straight into the workforce?
Skills. One of the things that drives me kind of crazy is that so many teachers I know do not use textbooks anymore. Oh, we don't need a textbook. It's old. It's dated. We'll just use little clips of pieces of material we find on the internet. And I think it creates a very uneven education for the kid. Any kid needs to be able to read a body of information and draw some conclusions out of that material. Not just, the first sentence, the capital of Spain is Madrid, and then you have the worksheet. What is the capital of Spain? You do start there with some kids, but they need to be able to look at it more intuitively, more in depth. And if you don't expose them to that kind of material effectively, they're going to be left behind.
Can you teach critical thinking?
I was always told to teach critical thinking. I have no idea whether I actually did.
I was going to ask you how one would do that.
I liked to present material, present the facts, or have students do it themselves. You look up this material, you look at the facts of the material, of the events, of the issue, and then you draw your own conclusion. But don't give me conclusions based on myth and fantasy and how I feel about it. Cite me some stuff that says this is why this occurred. And then we're good. So that, I guess if that's critical thinking, that's what I would try to do always, was not just to say, this is what you must believe, but why is this correct? What are the facts that support your position? And make sure that your sources are good, which I understand. And I only retired at the end of 2021. AI was not yet. Google was really happy, but AI didn't exist yet. And so I can only imagine what teachers are having to go through right now, where students will get information that may not be valid. It reminds me of, I used to have students do projects. They love projects. No, they do not. And I would have kids citing National Enquirer as their source.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to explain to them, no, that's not a valid source. Then Wikipedia in its early days. Well, Wikipedia's become much more legit than it was in its early stages. But what I would suggest to the kid is, sure, read it on Wikipedia. Now go find it in 4 other sources to validate what your Wikipedia gave you the general information about. But trying to validate, it's gotten hard. And now we're getting interesting commentary from some government officials that could be questionable under some circumstances. And it's making it hard to assess the truth. Just my opinion.
Well, that's actually, I mean, God, that brings up a lot of good points. But I mean, call me Pilate. What is truth?
Well, I didn't like kids to define truth as what they believed.
Yeah.
I would have kids, well, it's my opinion. My opinion can't be wrong because it's my opinion. And I said, no, that is a bad opinion. Your opinion is based on fantasy. I didn't say it quite that bluntly, but yeah, you can have a wrong opinion. You can have a bad opinion. And just because it's your opinion doesn't validate it immediately. So what is truth? Well, for me, it was whatever I told them it was.
I would say my definition of truth is that which exists in reality. If it is compatible with reality, then it is truth. That's
now you want to know what reality is.
Okay, Jordan Peterson.
We can't go there.
So whenever I was growing up, you had you touched on this
in sunny Cartersville,
and in beautiful Cartersville. Actually, I had a hat right next to you. But whenever I was growing up, I was taught you go to school, you graduate high school, you go to college, and then you can do whatever you want. The keys to the car was going to college. It seems like that that philosophy sort of like became like you kind of were teaching as that philosophy was going in. Do you know where that came from? Like where that idea, where as long as you go to college, you're going to be set?
I would guess, without any knowledge of this, that it was just based on the numbers. You get some guy, some economist runs some numbers and says, 4-year grads are making this much money. The guys who hit community college are at this level. The guys who were high school grads are here, and the guys that thought 10th grade was plenty, they were 16 and they were out of there. And then, so based on the numbers, people would say, well, of course you've got to go to college. And look, the grad school people, they're way up here with $200,000 in debt. Incidentally, I believe the 3 most profound words you can give to a child today, in-state tuition.
Oh, yeah, I mean, very much so.
Not that it's nothing wrong with going to a school out of state, say, I'll make up a place, Purdue or the University of Florida, very fine schools. If you get good financial situation with them, have at it. Mm-hmm. But for most kids, in-state tuition. And the ones that run up the debt, holy cow. I mean, great if you're on your way to brain surgery, but most of us aren't, except possibly as patients.
Well, I am, I think $200,000 for law school in debt. And I mean, you can see how well that's panning out. You and I are sitting in my law office talking.
No. And it's a very nice hat.
Thank you. So I guess you kind of touched on a little bit, but like, why is that philosophy incorrect?
That go to college.
Go to college and everything's going to be.
Because not everybody's suited to that environment. But it's very hard at 18 to know. Anecdotally, I have a friend who did not want to be a college guy. Mm-hmm. He wanted to work with his hands and went to college, got the white collar job, hated every minute of the experience, and ended up quitting all of that, working with his hands, doing carpentry and woodworking, and doing very comfortably at it. Mm-hmm. I have 2 other former students who went to college, looked at the white collar job, ended up back at dad's business. One does windows, one does plumbing. And they've kind of moved into those businesses, and they know the business, but they also know the hands-on, get your knuckles bruised kind of part of it. So I don't know, kids at 18, they often don't know. The more you can expose them to some of these other opportunities, the better they are. And schools are really trying to do more of that, whether it's through career days, which it's loads of, we have career day. And what do I get? I get a guy who's an Atlanta Falcon. Well, it's not going to work out so well for basically anybody. But they're trying to show them that there's more than just the exclusive college track and they're getting back into that.
We had, it was something I participated in, I think it was like in 2012 or something. It was sort of like a career day, But what it was were the kids were, the students were assigned different jobs. Like, at that point, whenever I was their age, I wanted to be an attorney. So I would have, like been an attorney. And what they would have done, like there were a whole bunch of, at the time I was a financial advisor. And so I was like sitting with a financial advisor table at the very end, and they would go all around and like they would have to either rent an apartment or buy a house. Then they would have to do something with a car. And so it had like all of these different things. And then like, it was sort of like, if you're an attorney, you made more money and stuff. But one thing that I had noticed, that first year, the kids that came up as an attorney, they would, have like, like maybe $100,000 left over. And they're like, man, I did really, really well here. And I had to say, well, okay, but here's the problem here. That $100,000 you aren't actually doing. You have a whole lot of debt that you're having to pay off first. And so it was like, it almost gave kids this thing like, as long as I'm being an attorney, I can immediately become upper middle class. And I think that was kind of like a false sense of reality, because you aren't going to be doing that well from the beginning. And so, there's kind of like a little bit of a like disconnect.
Kids don't know.
Yeah.
You can tell like they understand conceptually that you have to pay rent and you have a car payment and there's insurance and then there's the unplanned medical bill and there's all that stuff. But at that age, they know, do I have enough in my wallet to go to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A and get, a meal? And beyond that, talking about higher level economic concepts and planning and investments to a 14-year-old, it's largely sailing over their head. Now,
it wasn't my idea to
do No. There's a group called Junior Achievement, and I'm going to give them a shout out, I guess, that does just what you're talking about, giving kids career knowledge, some ideas, but bringing in a little reality therapy to them. And they've done a really good job with that, both with the 6th and 7th grade students, bringing them into a facility that was down at the World Congress Center here in Atlanta when I last did that. But it did really nice work with them, giving them some sense of, what happens with money and why when you graduate and you think, oh, I'm making all this money, it actually doesn't work out that way. But I think what a lot of them miss too is a lot of kids start with a leg up. If the parents are already comfortable, not rich, just okay. Those kids have a gigantic leg up on the kid whose parents got
Can
nothing.
we get into a little bit of that, of why that is a leg up? Even let's just say that the one kid is having his, like having all of his needs met, and his parents have pretty decent jobs. And then you have another kid who maybe like a single family home or something, and is having more responsibility than they necessarily should have. And so what's going on in those two families? Why does this kid have so much more of a leg up?
There's so many different levels.
Well, we got time, buddy.
Well, the kid from that situation knows if things go south, they've got a place to land.
Yes.
They're going to graduate from college or even just high school and know that I'm going to get a little help along the way. Oh, look at that. Mom's financing my car and dad's paying my insurance until I'm 25 and get settled. It's little stuff, but they're coming out. They can take some chances and they're going to be okay. Whereas that kid who's winging it down there at the lower income level, the challenges are much more real for them.
Yes.
And things have gotten so much more expensive. I can just go to my college experience in the 70s. I ran across my quarterly fee card last night. Now, it's embarrassing to say that I still have my quarterly fee card from the University of Florida, where I paid $256 for a full quarter of courses. So over the course of the year, 3 quarters, well, you do the math, you're pretty good. So I'm paying $750 in tuition plus living expenses. I'm going to the university for less than $3,000 a year. I had a roommate once who was getting up in the morning and going to work at Publix to help cover his college costs. Can a kid do that today? First of all, from a time standpoint. Secondly, from the cost standpoint, it's gotten much more difficult. And if the family is not able to provide much in the way of assistance, that's really difficult to get started in any way. So I think sometimes our country more broadly, maybe the current administration, is kind of deaf to the challenges faced by people for whom there's no real big safety net sitting there.
Yes. So whenever, whenever I was very conservative politically, and
You were?
yes, I up until up until the Great Recession.
Sorry,
actually,
I had a whiplash moment.
but in my mind, I'd spent a lot of my formative years in a mobile home, and my parents didn't have a whole bunch of money, so in my head, I was pulled myself up by my own bootstraps, and I was a self-made man. It actually wasn't until graduating college in 2009, and looking around and realizing no, I am not a self-made man at all, because I have a very, very large net that if something were to happen to me, I may fall, but I'm going to be okay. And that sense of protection was enough for me to be able to push forward. Now, someone on the reverse end, that kid that doesn't have that safety net, that is a heck of a lot scarier to try to do anything, because failure means a lot more for that person than it did for me.
Yeah, well, and the self-made man exists. The self-made woman exists. Just not as common as I think, nor as easy to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
You hate it when you see someone who's accomplished that and they look at somebody else and say, well, I did it, you can do it. First of all, sometimes their belief is bogus.
Yeah.
But secondly, not everybody has that skill set. I'm never going to be center fielder for the San Francisco Giants. Something about.
I was about to say, you sound a little upset. You're not quite over that one.
No. There was, what was it? Oh yeah, skill. Skill. That was a factor.
But he had everything else, and it seemed like he had a whole lot of heart. I would have given you a shot.
I learned that heart is not always sufficient when one is trying out for the baseball team. Apparently, they want you to be able to catch the ball without cringing, to hit the ball without closing your eyes and praying that these were, other necessary things.
So, you had said before that I didn't think that there was such a thing as a self-made man. So can you give me an example of who you think is a self-made man or
Abraham Lincoln? I don't know. I can't just right off the bat cite that.
I mean, Abraham Lincoln, though, is actually not a terrible one. He lost his mother whenever he was 9. His father would lease him out to different farms at the beginning, definitely in the beginning. His whole argument against slavery was if a man or a woman works, they should be paid for that work. That was the injustice that he saw with slavery. And yeah, I mean, he worked his way through law school. Yeah. Okay. Touche, Mr. Donegan. There may be a self-made man. Dang it.
And I don't doubt that there are people who start their own business, take great risks, climb out of the hole that they're in. There are those stories. They used to be in Reader's Digest magazine, which was, you've heard of magazines. They were these paper things that people would read. Yeah. I just can't come up and name somebody offhand. So if you're out there,
Abraham Lincoln
give us
was
a call.
solid.
1-800-CALL-ADAM.
No, Abraham Lincoln is actually a really good, dang it. That is a very good example of someone that could be considered self-made. He even taught himself law. He passed the bar exam by just reading law books and memorizing them. Yeah. Touche, sir.
Relatively smart guy. But he's an exceptional individual. And most of us aren't exceptional individuals. Most of us are simply good.
You're going to get me on a Abraham Lincoln. But whenever he gave the Gettysburg Address, he wasn't even the keynote speaker.
No, he was not.
I can't remember the name of the speaker, but I think that he spoke for over an hour and a half.
Yeah, he was a renowned orator, and Lincoln comes up, and in 3 minutes.
And the guy even said as much to Lincoln.
Yeah.
He said, "You said in 3 minutes what I couldn't say in however long his speech was."
Yeah, which is why I always encourage students that even at the last minute, get something done. It might be the next Gettysburg Address. I'm not sure I ever actually said that, but.
Well, that and you saying something at the last minute reminded me. So Martin Luther King's address to the Montgomery Bus Boycott Association. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't even the leader of that group. They essentially that day appointed him to be the leader of all of the pastors because he was the youngest and had the least amount of baggage. That was his big, like, you're going to be the leader. Yep. You're young and you don't have the baggage. And so he had 15 minutes to come up, address the Montgomery Bus Boycott Association. He said he spent the first 5 overwhelmed by the task. And so he's like, well, crap, I only got 10 minutes. And so in 10 minutes, he wrote and delivered the address.
I would say my first few years of teaching, some of my best lesson plans were formulated in the parking lot on the way into the building, because you're about to face down a class of 25, 30, 35 students, more in some states. You'd best have something. And it's amazing how pressure. Pressure makes diamonds. Pressure sometimes, and sometimes the lesson was trash. But you'd have a plan and you'd see it was not going to work, and you'd get an inspiration. You'd talk to the guy next to you and maybe come up with something that would improve the lesson you were about to do. I'm going to go back to the teaching in the early days thing. My first 2 years of teaching in Florida, the department chair taught half a day, 3 periods a day. She had the rest of the day to work with new teachers, to work with other issues the school might be facing. And that really enabled me to teach the next 40, because instead of walking into my next job, as a deer in the headlights, I had now had 2 years almost of student teaching where I had peers around me. We had 5 of us all teaching American history. We shared lessons like crazy people. And I learned so much that year, both about history and about how to present material, how to engage the students, what was a bad idea, what was a good idea. I had the department chair to fall back on. They had cabinets full of materials that other teachers had used. And I think sometimes too many teachers are tossed into the wolves and are just hung out to dry. That first year can be brutal. And in too many schools, who gets the most challenging classes? The teacher who's been there for 30 years or the newbie?
Right. It's definitely
you say, hey, sweat hogs, here's your teacher. She'll be working here about 6 months and then she'll quit and we'll hire somebody else. They don't get enough. I don't know that new teachers always get enough support. They say, assistant principals will walk into your room and say, we're going to support you all day. And then you don't see them again. Unless they come down to ask for your lesson plans, which are probably late in my case, but that's a personal problem that I don't want to revisit. But getting support for teachers in that first year is gigantically important, and not just saddling them with the most challenging students. And I hope that schools are doing a better job of it. I've not seen that, but I was very fortunate to benefit from that my first 2 years.
So why was it in that one school that you start out where you had that support, but then there's not the support systems around in the other schools?
I don't know. Maybe it was a single high school system. Martin County High School in Florida. Hello, Martin County, home of the Tigers. It was the only high school in the county. And so it was the focus of all the attention. It had a lot of very progressive-minded people. And I don't mean progressive in that way that progressive is being used as a pejorative today, but people who looked at the school and said, how can we make this school better? What's a good structure? What can we try here? They were surprisingly innovative. And maybe it's because they weren't part of a monolithic big system that was trying to figure out a way to work across 18 different high schools. I'm talking about one of the big metro Atlanta systems, DeKalb County. This school and this school have wildly different needs. And yet the county office is trying to prescribe something that fits all. And didn't work. Because these guys could do one thing and these guys needed to do another. And it wasn't always successful. The big monolithic systems are tough. There's benefits to size.
Right.
But there's also drawbacks. And maybe that was what helped Martin County. I'm not necessarily endorsing breaking up a county into lots of little dinky systems. That has its flaws. You've got added administrative costs, but there's something to be said for figuring out that this school needs this and this school needs that.
What are some of the positives of like the monolith? Where
the big system?
Yeah, the big system.
You can offer everything. A system like DeKalb, some school in DeKalb offers something. Everything is offered someplace in the system. Now, figuring out how to get to the school that offers that program or to benefit from it can be much more challenging. And it does cause problems. If one school has 15 AP classes and another school has 5, well, that seems like a disparity. But one school has huge numbers of kids who are college bound and another school has only a handful. What do you do there? I worked in a situation once where to try and get the AP classes need to be inclusive. Absolutely. Let every kid give it a shot.
The what class?
Advanced placement.
Oh yeah. Okay. AP.
But on the other hand, we had kids in there who were 2 weeks in, they weren't keeping up or even remotely close to keeping up because they weren't ready for that yet.
Yeah.
So you wanted to be inclusive, but now you were getting calls from the parents. Why does my kid have a C or a D or an F in your class? You need to slow it down. I said, well, I'm trying to teach an advanced placement class that's supposed to prep a kid to take a test to get him college credit. What are you supposed to do? You can't slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't slow it down, you're going to have a whole pile of kids not pleased. And more importantly, their parents.
Yeah. Can you get into a little bit, what is school choice? Like what is that? What is that? What does it mean?
Different things to different people, I suppose.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Well, within the public school system, it can be the ability to go to a special program or a magnet program that will draw in other like-minded students. So if you're a math wizard and passionate about it, and there's a math magnet school in that system, well, then you can, instead of going to the school that you're zoned for, go to this magnet school that does that. So that's a school choice. Mm. And that has been successful to some degree in some areas with some programs.
A lot of caveats there.
Well, yeah, but some have been hugely successful. Some have been not done as well. Mm-hmm. Another look at school choice, though, is the one that causes me concern, is the idea of the voucher system to send students to private schools.
Okay. What is that?
I only know what I think I know.
Okay.
Right now in the state of Georgia, up to a certain number, students can get about $6,500 to leave their private school system and take their money and go to a leave the public school system and go to a private school of their choosing. And the claim is that it provides families and parents with choice, with opportunities. It can get a kid out of a failing school. Mm-hmm. Well, great. Let's suppose we have a quote unquote, and I hate the term failing school. Yeah. You've got a kid in a failing school, as it's called. The test grades are low. The discipline problems are abundant. The challenges are real. So great. We've got 1,000 kids in that school. 50 of them get these vouchers and off they go. Well, what have we done for the other 950 kids? Mm-hmm. Well, we've probably sucked out the PTA president, mom or dad. Mm-hmm. We've probably taken out a number of the really good students who were kind of the glue of that school. And they're going off to a private school. And we've done nothing for the great majority of the students except suck away some of their funding and some of their kids. Now they have to let go of 2 teachers because the numbers aren't there anymore. I am not a fan of the concept of school vouchers. Most private schools, well, the prestigious ones, I think everybody imagines that my kid's going to get a voucher and he's suddenly going to get admitted to prestigious academy that costs $25,000 a year. Well, if you're coming from a modest background, $6,500 is not going to get you anywhere in that $25,000 a year school. Further, they're not going to admit you unless you're wildly bright or possibly very studly athletic. And I just see them as means of benefiting a handful at the expense of the great majority of students. Further, in rural Georgia, there are no private options. So now you've got maybe kids being homeschooled, and homeschool works for some, but I've also observed it to be very, in some cases, kind of narrow. A kid's really good in literature, language arts. They've read everything, but their physics knowledge is kind of sketchy. Or chemistry, they've never heard of it. Or in the case of one kid I had, remember her very well, she was not socially able to work with other students at all. She'd never had that experience. Yeah. So the vouchers, the school choice, yeah, it can be okay-ish, but by and large, I see it as just gutting our public schools. Further, now we're seeing the development of private for-profit schools. And who's going to open a private school for profit that says, send me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to make C's? Nobody's going to open that school.
Yeah.
They don't want that. They want to be able to say 100% of our kids go to college, or our sports teams win state championships. So sending me your little scrawny kid who can't make the San Francisco Giants as a center fielder, it's not going to happen. So yeah, it's one of those things that I rail against occasionally around the dinner table to people who are fascinated by my every word.
So whenever that kid goes from the public school to the private school, how does the public school lose funding from
There's
that?
a per pupil funding of public schools. It's pretty much, I guess it's mostly national because most schools are funded by state and local tax money. So in theory, well, in practice, the kid pulls out of the school. Well, that school is no longer going to receive the state per pupil funding for that kid. So the counter argument is that, well, we're just transferring that per pupil dollar over to the private school. It's a wash, that there's no loss.
It's still going to education. That's kind of what they're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
But when you pull something out of the public school, it harms it. And I don't know why there's such a passion in this country to decimate the public school system. I do not understand that.
Well,
because
I'm sorry.
The United States has done okay with public education, which still educates, about 90% of students?
Yeah.
Since post-Civil War era, when public education really finally came in to be universal across the country, we've done okay. And I don't know why there's this passion to destroy it.
Well, think of do a cost benefit analysis. The cost to the public school is incredibly great, but I don't really see much of a benefit from the private school. It gets a few extra dollars, but it's not, and to that private school, I'm sure it's not hurting for money at all. I don't even really see much of a benefit.
Not all private schools are prestigious 25K a year academies with wonderful facilities, great teachers. And I'm not denigrating the private schools at all. The ones.
Oh, I am. I'm going to take them to the woodshed here.
The prestigious, well-known, big name private schools, they've got great teachers. They got great facilities. The kids are great. They're getting instructed well. Some of them do a really good job of giving the kids a sense of, what was the phrase? Noblesse oblige, or at least a sense of duty and social activism. They're good. Some of them are really good, the really big name ones. But the kid getting the $6,500 voucher isn't going to that school. Yeah, they're going to. Some of them are religious. Some of them are simply out there on their own mission. I don't get it. And they're not always very good. Yeah. Okay. They're not always very good. They don't have the facilities. They don't have the instructors. I don't want to put down the instructors, but
they don't have the infrastructure. Maybe
no, they don't. Yeah. They don't.
Okay. So you were saying that public schools are predominantly funded by local and state tax dollars. Is that right? So local, it's the
county property taxes.
Yeah, property taxes. Okay. And so how is that money divvied up into so this amount's going to go to this school versus that school? How does that?
In theory, in DeKalb County, for example, where I live, everybody's getting an equal chunk of the state money and the county money as well. It ignores sometimes the fact that the needs of this school are far greater than the needs of that school. But everybody wants to be equal, and I get that. But the simple facts are they're not all the same. It's like so many things. Not everything's equal. One person's healthy and strong and has health insurance and never uses a dime of it. Yeah. And somebody else got issues and they need a lot more support. Well, schools are that way too. When I was working at a school that was in an economically challenged community, I don't think people recognize what that's like sometimes. But at any rate, for about 4 years.
Can you describe your experience a little bit?
Well, for about 4 years, the school was given, we were staffed up to the max. We added teachers. We gave every teacher 2 planning periods instead of the customary 1. The place was we brought class size down. A class size is another of my major rants. Every kid after kid number 24 is a problem. Every kid after 35, you don't even know their name. And yet there are states and there are schools and there are systems that think nothing of piling kids into the class because some guy did a study that said class size does not impact student learning or something like that. Right. Well, find me a teacher out there who says, yeah, I don't care. I'd be just as happy with 35. No, they won't.
Mhm.
I didn't like a tiny class, but you start cracking over 30, you don't get to connect with the kids as well. But where was I? I sidetracked myself on that.
So we were
the
talking
school
about
staffed up.
Yeah.
And we kept every class under 20, 25 kids. Teachers everywhere. Teachers chose to stay in that, what had previously been a somewhat unstable environment, because they knew that they were only going to see 80 to 100 kids a day. They were going to have manageable course loads. They were going to have manageable grading. And because the administration, which was led by a very good principal, was going to be really supportive. And so for 3, 4, 5 years, that school was very civil. Things worked. Kids were doing better. But it cost a ton of money. You had to pay a lot more to that school than to that school that didn't need that level of support. So eventually the money dried up. The school got a little wackadoo, and I transferred because I hated stepping over the kids fighting in the hallway. It could mess up my shoes, and I wasn't going to put up with that.
So at least in the beginning, whenever you were able to like have the full lot of teachers, and what got the funding there in the first place? Like,
I don't know. Something happened at the county office, and somebody said we're going to try a pilot program to help out School X, and I felt it did.
Yeah.
Stabilize the faculty, which is really important. Once kids know you a little bit, it gains you all kinds of props. I had a kid who was a problem child, but the next year there was a fight going on, and I came into the fight to try and discourage it with, my brawny self. And the kid's like, "Oh, hey, Mr. Donegan, how you doing?" And everything kind of broke up.
Yeah.
Okay. Because, that's Mr. Donegan. He's a little off, but we can tolerate him. So we can stop what we're doing now. Hey, how you doing? So getting a stable faculty is a big deal because the teachers know the kids know the teachers. It evens things out quite a bit. So if you've got a high faculty turnover, that's a problem. And figuring out how to keep the staff intact it's a trick. And I think you do it by keeping class sizes modest. Don't butcher your first year teachers. Administrative support is more than just lip service. And I had an administrator one time, she was working on a PhD, and she put the blinds down in her office. And we knew she was working on her PhD on our dime, on our time. And not exactly, she would pop out between classes to monitor the hallway and then back in with the blinds down. That's not a good thing, by the way. I'm not recommending it.
So where does the federal government come in? Is there any funding that comes from the federal government to public schools?
As far as I know, and this was not something as far as I know, it's mostly just into some special programs, some for special needs kids, some for meal programs. A lot of it seemed to have been, just based on my observation, trying to make sure we were following up on proper procedures for students with special needs. We did not allow them to fall, into the cracks and lose those kids. So it seemed to me that most of what Department of Education was trying to do was to level the playing field, and not with money so much as with making certain that everybody was following what they were supposed to do. It's interesting to contrast the American philosophy of education, which is every state does its own thing.
Right.
Hence you get Georgia history in Georgia, Florida history in Florida, and so on. I visited schools in Japan once. It was a wonderful experience. Japan has a national education system. If you're in Japan and it's Tuesday, everybody's more or less on the same page. Now that's an exaggeration.
Yeah.
Every textbook was approved by the national board rather than prefectures or state boards. Now Japan's a very different country.
Yeah.
You have a very monolithic, not totally, of course, but a very singular identity, ethnicity. You can do things in Japan perhaps that you could never do in the wonderfully multi-ethnic wackadoo country that we live in. But it was interesting to see how different we are, where we believe every state and practically every county, perhaps every parent, should choose their kids' education. Where the Japanese education system was, no, we're not doing that. Everybody's doing this. Have a nice day. Here are the 3 textbooks we've approved. Your city or your school or your prefecture can pick the book, but it's one of these 3.
Yeah.
The other really cool thing, who cleans the restrooms in the Japanese school?
The teachers?
The Japanese kids.
Oh.
So, who serves the cafeteria lunches?
The kids.
The Japanese kids. Who's cleaning the hallways? Who's picking up every day?
Yes.
Certainly puts in a sense of ownership in the classroom. Now, did I see a kid sleeping in a Japanese calculus class? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Was there a kid kind of misbehaving and acting goofy? Yes. Was it my fault? Probably, because I can bring that out in kids. But it was a very interesting contrast to the American system. Can we adapt the Japanese system and have a national education department? No. No, we really can't. Should we maybe get a little more guidance? Though? Yeah. Instead of assigning well, you know who Linda McMahon is. Mm-hmm. She was one of your idols in your in that period of your life where you wanted to become a pro wrestler. You and Linda McMahon were probably going to be like this someday. And now she's wrestling with the Department of Education and apparently is body slamming it or tossing it over the ropes. It's unpleasant to watch, in my humblest opinion.
So that brings up a very good point. You're kind of saying that there's like it's more about like helping certain programs and stuff. So like, is there really a need for a Department of Education? We have one group saying,
do you trust not just every state, but any state or any local system to follow policies for students with special needs? Do you trust them to do that?
No.
I don't at all. Sadly, I don't. Because it becomes easy to push some of those aside, ignore them, give them half attention. I think I would have preferred a stronger Department of Education that provided perhaps more guidance into curriculum.
Yeah.
But, we are such a wonderfully stubborn country and wonderfully individualistic, where everybody thinks, I know they do it that way in Cobb County, but in Cartersville, we should do what county is Cartersville?
Bartow County.
Bartow County. Oh, yeah, Bartow County. Well, everybody knows Bartow County. Everybody thinks they know how it ought to be done, everybody wants to micromanage it. And that's just part of who we are as Americans. It's what makes us so much fun.
Our desire to micromanage everything.
And be very individualistic and independent. And these are good traits. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we become a tiny bit self-destructive.
Well, and I also think that people have this individualistic mindset, but are beneficiaries of programs that are not individualistic in nature. And there is a certain cognitive dissonance that comes with that. I have,
and it's unrelated to education, but I've observed there was a recent election, you may recall, and I'm watching people vote for one candidate where clearly they have benefited from everything the other candidate did. But they live in a wonderful state. It's that river in Egypt. They're in denial. Which was, of course, the cornerstone of how I would teach a class. How can I make a pun or a riff on something? And if I could, then maybe the kid would remember it. Maybe not. I don't know. But any kid in my class, they were probably in denial.
Well, how do you get someone out of denial? I'm asking for a country.
I don't know. They're going to have to get slapped around a little bit, I think. The suffering
at the ballot box.
The suffering has to be real. And that's sad. That's unfortunate. I don't know. I live with a person who's very active. She's my favorite wife ever. And she's very active in trying to encourage voting. If turnout were what it ought to be, and you read of countries where turnout is 70, 80, 90%, and we're excited when we hit 60 or something, or 70. If turnout were what it was supposed to be, we might see more satisfactory results. But, and what we are also observing is some attempt to repress voting rights.
Right.
But that's a different story that has nothing to do with education, except maybe it does a little bit, because one of the things you would teach in class, and I worry sometimes about how I would teach today, just 4 years after I retired, I was always very balanced. I was a Republican. And I would have a picture of, I remember the 2016 election, I had a big picture of Hillary over here, big picture of Donald over here, and somebody put a mustache on one of them. And I got very annoyed at that. And I said, that's not how we roll here. We're going to be balanced. We're going to look at each side. We're going to assess what they said. Is this one or that one always right or always wrong? We're going to look at that and try and critically view what their statement was, because none of them are wrong all the time on everything-ish.
Well, one of those candidates has a hat now that says he was right about everything.
We would challenge that statement. As a social studies teacher, you're always aware that you've got kids from all over the political spectrum.
Especially in DeKalb.
No. In DeKalb, you have kids from one political spectrum. You are 90% Democrat. That was DeKalb. But Mississippi, where I taught for 3 years, that was a whole different animal. Most of those students came from a very conservative background. I couldn't schedule practices for activities on Wednesday because everybody had to go to church. Yeah. They were Methodist or Baptist. And they always, what are you, Mr. Donegan? I wouldn't tell them. So they decided rather arbitrarily that I must be Jewish. Because Donegan is a very traditional Jewish name.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
and,
that. I would have guessed Episcopalian over
here. It was very entertaining. I had a great experience teaching there. I liked the kids. I think Carolyn said that it was a great place to raise a kid, not so much to raise an adult. But I had really good times with the students there. And I knew where they were coming from politically. In February, Black History Month, I was working in a class that
not for the Army.
The classes I was teaching I had to invent the curriculum. It was a class for gifted high achiever students, some of whom actually were. And I said, it's February. We're going to do Black history stuff all month long. And I could see the largely not African-American class just kind of groaning about it. At the end of the class, do you know the movie, The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman?
No.
Or the story?
I'm not sure.
Bottom line is, 101-year-old woman, it's a fictionalized history, goes and drinks from the whites only fountain. And these sixth grade boys, they let her drink from the fountain. It was really good.
Yeah.
They enjoyed because I wasn't just doing trivia Black history stuff,
right?
Which I don't like. Who invented the broom? I'm not going to teach that. But I was looking at significant events, challenges faced, good literature, good art, good, stories of overcoming real hardship. And I think I'm not going to say I changed every kid's life, but I won a few hearts and minds in that class. And I was being neutral. You know what I mean? I was not trying to hammer home, you must believe this, but let's look at this. Let's look at that. It was an interesting experience. So what every teacher has to look at, particularly in social studies, is how do you reach both sides of the spectrum without offending the one, I won't say offending, but without driving one or the other out. And there's this Trump guy, right? President. I know if I were teaching today, I'd have to say he's not entirely wrong about expressing concerns about this issue. What do we think of the approach to that issue? What would be a better way to solve that issue? But is he entirely wrong about wanting to bring peace in the Middle East? Yeah, no. Is his methodology sometimes questionable? I would argue yes.
Yeah.
Is immigration a concern? Yup. Is the approach to it correct?
Hard pass, no.
Hard pass, no. But it was challenging in the first term. I think it would be almost impossible in this term. And I don't know how teachers are doing it, to present a good, neutral, objective observation of this administration. It'd be tough. It'd be tough. And I again, Donald tapped into some really things that people cared about. The immigration issue, taxes. People don't even seem to recognize that the tax policies aren't doing squat for them. Income inequality is just awful.
Yeah. People all of a sudden, whenever it's an election year, people's economic prospects skyrocket for some reason. And then right after November, they always go down. But it is the darndest thing. For
people who are invested in the stock market right now is not a bad economic time.
Yeah.
And gas prices are low. So that's something else that people just, you kind of ignore some of the other things that are occurring. But yeah, I don't know what teachers are doing to deal with this dichotomy. But you have to recognize who you're seeing in class. You're seeing, and DeKalb was very socially, I mean, we had kids of every ethnicity, every religious background. So that part was easy, but politically they were pretty monolithic. But not entirely.
You had mentioned something about, you touched some hearts and minds, during your time. And actually, it's kind of a theory that I sort of developed whenever I was studying Martin Luther King in college. But I think that in order to change a mind, you have to touch a heart first. You have to make a connection with someone. And it seems like that was kind of what you had done, your 40-odd year career. You were
very odd years.
But that was kind of that was one of the things you would do. You would try to make a connection with the kids, as opposed to just, I'm teaching you this, you're going to learn it, yada, yada.
It evolves over time. But yeah, I like to think that I think the first year I taught, I thought, well, like in the medical profession, what's the oath? Do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my first year I thought, well, I'll just do no harm this year. And then I kind of recognized that that's not sufficient. It can't just be do no harm. You got to do some good if you can.
Yeah.
And essentially, I jest that I found I had the same sense of humor as a 12-year-old. But I felt I could identify a little bit with them. I worked fine with high school seniors too. Mm-hmm. Because you got to look at the kid. And I've seen teachers say, it was an interesting moment. I had a kid who was going to go skiing, African-American kid. And he told another African-American teacher, say, hey, I'm going to go snow skiing this year in December over the break. And she said, honey, Black children don't go skiing. And I thought that was an odd thing to say to the kid. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying to him, really, where are you going skiing? Are you going to Utah? Have you been to Colorado before? Is this your first time? Instead of engaging him, mm-hmm. she immediately put him down. And I always feel, I hope I did, that I tried to engage the kids somehow. Because you know what? You never know. I learned a lot about, like, you might have a kid sits in the back row and doesn't speak for the entire school year. And at the end of the year, the guidance counselor comes up and says, well, Bob says you were his favorite teacher and you made a great impact on him. I can't even remember who Bob is without looking him up in the yearbook. Yeah. Because he didn't say a word. I had no knowledge that I was reaching that kid. Or conversely, there might have been a kid like Adam who was always in my face. And the next year, Adam's like, yeah, your class drove me crazy. I had no idea. And teachers, you don't know. Yeah. So you got to try and you just go.
Now, did being a middle school teacher prepare you to be a daycare instructor for the grandkids now?
The biggest difference is that I don't have to carry them to the bathroom. I didn't have to carry them to did it prepare me? Patience. Mm. Patience is not one of my greatest skills innately. But now when you're working with a 6-month-old granddaughter who comes over 4 hours a day, and I'm wonderfully lucky to have her company, teaching her good music, and she can grow up with some real challenges. But at any rate, the two are not connected really well, but I'm having a great time doing the daycare thing.
You seem really happy.
I try to project that. Tears of a clown. No, I am pretty happy with things. Yes, absolutely. I'm very fortunate that things worked out that I could teach for 40 years. A lot of people can't. Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate that I've got a great family situation, that I get to see the granddaughters regularly. Things are good.
Mr. Donegan, thank you so much for acting out with me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to gossip about teaching for an hour.
I had fun doing it.
Oh, good.
You have to come back. Hopefully when we got a little bigger platform.
We can talk about the Giants and my baseball career.
And Sid Bream, too.
There we go.
I actually met Bobby Cox. So Bobby Cox lived in Bartow County, but not in the mecca of Cartersville. And I think it was maybe like 93, 94. And he had gone into town to the grocery store, and I got to meet him and shook his hand, and he asked me, like, well, who's your favorite player? I was like, oh, it's Sid Bream. It's Sid Bream. He's like, I'm going to tell him that you said hey. And I think for the next 6 months, I was like, hey, Sid Bream knows I said hey to him. That was like the biggest thing in the world for me.
It's quite a shirt. Yeah, magic moment.